Fly. Even uttering the title can spark debate. For some, it's a masterpiece of character study, a pressure cooker episode that distills the show's essence. For others, it's the ultimate filler, a frustratingly slow hour spent watching Walter White, brilliant chemist turned kingpin, obsessively hunting a single housefly in the state-of-the-art superlab. No shootouts, no major drug deals, no dramatic confrontations with Gus Fring or the cartel. Just Walt, Jesse, and an insect. It stands out starkly from the propulsive narrative momentum Breaking Bad is famous for, and that's precisely why it demands a closer look. It's easy to dismiss Fly as a budget-saving bottle episode, and certainly functions as one on a production level. But to leave it at that is to miss the point entirely. This episode isn't filler, it's foundational. It's a deep psychological dive into the rotting core of Walter White, happening precisely when he believes he's achieved a new level of control and professionalism. So why The Fly? Why dedicate an entire hour to this seemingly insignificant pest? Let's break it down. First, we need to consider the context. Walt and Jesse are now working for Gus Fring in the Superlab. This is supposed to be the big leagues, the pinnacle of meth production. Efficiency, purity, and above all, control are paramount. Gus demands perfection. The lab itself is a marvel of a sterile, controlled environment. Stainless steel, advanced equipment, rigorous procedures. It's a stark contrast to the chaotic, unpredictable RV cook days. For Walt, this lab represents a warped kind of legitimacy, a validation of his scientific prowess, even if it's in service of criminality. He believes he has compartmentalized, that he can maintain his pristine operations separate from the moral filth accumulating in his life. And then comes The Fly. On the surface, Walt's obsession is about contamination. A single fly, as he explains to a bewildered Jesse, could introduce bacteria, foreign particles, compromising the purity of their multi-million-dollar product. He invokes protocols, scientific rigor. It's the meticulous chemist speaking, the man obsessed with fractions of percentage points in purity. This obsession drives him to increasingly desperate, almost comical lengths, swatting wildly, building elaborate contraptions, shutting down production entirely. Jesse, initially dismissive, then concerned, then utterly exasperated, sees it as Walt losing his mind, and maybe, on one level, he is. But the fly is so much more than a literal contaminant. It's a symbol. It's the physical manifestation of everything Walt is trying and failing to keep out. It's the intrusion of chaos into his meticulously ordered world. Think about it. This tiny, insignificant creature brings the entire multi-million-dollar operation grinding to a halt. It defies Walt's control, mocks his authority within this space he considers his domain. He can synthesize the purest methamphetamine on the planet, manipulate cartels, and stare down Gus Fring, but he cannot eliminate one single fly. It represents the inherent unpredictability of life, the consequences he cannot sanitize away, the dirt that inevitably creeps into even the most sterile environments. More profoundly, the fly represents Walt's festering guilt. By this point in season 3, Walt is carrying an immense psychic burden. He's responsible directly or indirectly for multiple deaths: Crazy 8, Emilio, Domingo, Tuco, the passengers of Wayfarer 515, but the weight pressing down on him most heavily in this episode, the one buzzing incessantly in the back of his mind, is Jane Margolis. His decision to watch Jane choke on her own vomit, to not intervene, haunts him. It was a calculated act of self-preservation disguised as inaction, and it directly led to the grief-stricken meltdown of her father, Donald Margolis. The air traffic controller whose error caused the mid-air collision over Albuquerque. The debris literally rained down on Walter's house. He cannot escape the consequences. The fly becomes the externalized focus point for his internal turmoil. His frantic efforts to kill it mirror his desperate attempts to suppress his guilt, to squash the memory of Jane, to regain control over his own conscience. His sleep-deprived paranoid unraveling. The insomnia he mentions isn't just physical, it's moral. His soul cannot rest. This leads us to the episode's most crucial scenes. The conversations between Walt and Jesse. Stripped of external plot pressures, Fly becomes an intense two-hander, forcing these complex partners together in a claustrophobic space. Their relationship is fraught with tension, mistrust, and a strange, warped codependency. Jesse, despite everything, still shows concern for Walt. He tries to help, tries to understand, tries to coax Walt down from the metaphorical and literal ledge, or ladder in this case. Remember Walt perched precariously, rambling semi-coherently? He talks about the perfect moment, the moment he should have died. He recounts finding out about his cancer diagnosis, the subsequent events, but his timeline is hazy, his recollections tinged with regret. He circles the drain of confession, particularly regarding Jane. When Jesse talked about Jane sharing his own lingering pain and guilt, Walt listens, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. He comes agonizingly close to telling Jesse the truth. You can see the words forming, the confession bubbling, driven up by his exhaustion and the crushing weight of his secret. "I watched her die," he almost says. "I could have saved her, but I didn't." Think about the gravity of that potential confession. If Walt had confessed then and there, everything would have changed. Jesse's loyalty, already strained, likely would have shattered completely, potentially with violent consequences. The entire trajectory of the show could have pivoted in that moment. But he stopped himself, or rather, the fly, momentarily forgotten, distracts him just enough. Or perhaps, even in his delirium, his instinct for self-preservation remains paramount. This near confession is vital. It underscores the depth of Walt's guilt and the secret that poisons his relationship with Jesse. It highlights the tragic irony that Walt, who claims to be doing everything for his family, has destroyed Jesse's potential family by letting Jane die, and continues to manipulate and endanger Jesse for his own ends. Jesse's role in this episode is equally significant. He transitions from annoyed subordinate to concerned caretaker. He sees Walt's vulnerability, his breakdown, his reasoning, then humor, then ultimately resorts to drugging Walt's coffee with sleeping pills to force him to rest. An act of dubious care, perhaps, but care nonetheless. It's a reversal of their usual dynamic, with Jesse becoming the more stable, pragmatic one, trying to manage the increasingly erratic Walt. There's a poignant moment after Walt has finally succumbed to his sleeping pills. Jesse, having successfully dispatched the fly himself with little fuss, sets up Walt comfortably. He checks the monitors, assumes the position of responsibility. It shows Jesse's competence when Walt isn't undermining him. It also shows the lingering, damaged bond between them. Jesse could leave, exploit Walt's vulnerability, but he doesn't. He stays. He cleans up the mess, both literal and metaphorical, at least for now. From a craft perspective, Fly is a showcase, directed by Rian Johnson, who would later helm controversial entries in other major franchises, but here demonstrates incredible control. The episode uses its limitations to its advantage. The cinematography emphasizes the claustrophobia of the lab, unusual angles, extreme close-ups on the fly, and the stark, sterile lighting create a sense of unease and psychological tension. The limited setting forces the focus entirely onto the actors. Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul deliver tour-de-force performances, navigating complex emotional shifts with nuance and power. Cranston in particular portrays Walt's unraveling with terrifying precision. The tics, the paranoia, the flashes of vulnerability beneath the obsessive rage. The episode functions as a pause button, yes, but a necessary one. Breaking Bad often moves at breakneck speed. Fly allows the audience and the characters to breathe, albeit uneasily. It forces us to sit with Walt in his self-inflicted purgatory, to confront the psychological toll of his choices without the distraction of external threats. It reminds us that the greatest dangers Walt faces are often internal: his hubris, his ego, his guilt. These are contaminants far more potent than any insect. It's also a masterful example of using subtext. Very little is explicitly stated, particularly regarding Jane, but the weight of her absence and roles Walt in it hangs heavy in the air, buzzing just beneath the surface like the fly itself. The episode trusts the audience to connect the dots, to understand the unspoken fears and regrets driving Walt's mania. So why the fly? It's a symbol of chaos invading order. It's a physical stand-in for Walt's pervasive, inescapable guilt, particularly over Jane. It's a catalyst forcing confrontation, however oblique, between Walt and Jesse, exposing the cracks in their partnership. It's a manifestation of Walt losing control, both literally over his environment and figuratively over his life and conscience. It's an obstacle that reveals character through obsession and exhaustion. It's a narrative device allowing for a deep, focused exploration of Walt's deteriorating psychological state. Fly isn't an interruption from the story. It is the story, distilled down to its psychological essence. It lays bare the moral contamination at the heart of Walter White. He can build a perfect lab, cook perfect meth, but he cannot purify himself. He cannot escape the consequences buzzing around his head. The Fly might be dead by the end of the episode, swatted by Jesse, but the contamination it represents, that remains festering, waiting for its moment to fully consume him. It's an episode that rewards patience and analysis, revealing layers of meaning that enrich the entire series. It proves that sometimes the smallest things can represent the biggest anxieties, and that true horror doesn't always come from a gun, but from the quiet hum of guilt in a sterile room. What are your thoughts on Fly? Masterpiece or misstep? Let us know in the comments below, and thank you for watching.